Hello and welcome to another episode of Bible FPL. Back to back uploads. What is going on? We're testing out the new mic that we got for Christmas. We'll see how it goes. And this is a slightly different wildcard video, but hopefully a really helpful one. I was thinking yesterday, I was watching is it the pubcast, I think, with Steve-O was on, and he had a really honest chat about basically why he's quit FPL, and a lot of it was just to do with stress from the game, just not enjoying it, finding it too stressful, transfer decisions going wrong, and I could relate in a lot of ways in terms of just how much FPL can stress me out when it goes badly, when I transfer someone out that smashes it. This week was a prime example. I transferred out Rice because of the injury doubts, as did I'm sure a lot of you too, or you may have benched him, etc. And he gets a 17 pointer, and it can be so painful sometimes, this game, when things like that go wrong. And I was thinking to myself, like, surely there's a way of making a team that minimizes FPL pain and maximizes FPL joy. And I've had a think about it, and I've come up with a strategy that I think could actually work really nicely. I think it takes a bit of discipline to stick to the strategy and stick to the plan, but it also allows for a little bit of flexibility to still have fun punts in a way that hopefully doesn't like ruin your joy and cause you too much stress when the fun punts go wrong. So I'll explain, but essentially, it's going to be a bit of a set and forget team, but there is an area of flexibility to allow a bit of fun along the way. So I'll explain how the team works as I go through it. So the Bravka in goal is just a no-brainer. Enabling goalkeeper, right? You can sit on your bench every single week. You never need to worry about like, oh, should I start him because he plays for Burnley and they've been struggling all season, no matter what the fixture is. And for this team, there's a few options as to who you could pair him with. Like ultimately, if you're playing your wild card this week and you want a non-stressful keeper that you're happy with to back for the season, go for who you want to go with. But I think Raya, best defense in the league. You play him every week and you just enjoy the clean sheets that he gets. So Raya we've picked in goal for this team. At the back, I mean Gabriel is just essential, isn't he? You play him every single week. This man is fixture proof because he can score in the harder games, and Arsenal have an elite defence. Like I said, with Raya, they can keep a clean sheet in any game. So you've got a lovely Arsenal double defence. You've got no worries about rotation or minutes with those two guys. Happy days, no stress week to week. You just play him. Then the next player, we're actually going to go with Chalobah, partly because the fixture run for Chelsea is just divine. It starts this week as well, so it's like you've got Fulham, Brentford, Palace, then West Ham, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley. It's absolutely glorious. You play them every single one of those weeks. You don't even worry about like rotation in terms of like who, do I swap him with someone? You play them every week for those weeks. And I'll tell you a little plan as to what happens when it gets to Arsenal away in 28. But I'll get to that in a bit. So you've got Chalobah, happy, really just like lovely picked up in your team. Tarkovsky, another one, has nailed his houses for Everton. He's good from set pieces. He's great for DEFCON. And they also have a pretty decent fixture run still. So Tarkovsky, you play him every single week, and there's a couple of trickier games down the line, such as this Arsenal one, which again I've got a plan for, which I'll tell you about. But you basically start him pretty much every week, and you don't worry about him, and you enjoy the points he gets. Now, who's the next player that we bring in? Now, I've done a bit of an interesting one here. I've gone for Mukiele. So the team's going to be, I think it's a 4-4-2. And Mukiele has basically, like, don't be put off by his price. This man has been unreal this season. I've owned him in my team for a long part of it, and he's just been incredible. His DEFCON racks in week to week to week, and he's got some decent fixtures. And in the harder games, again, I've got a plan for you guys, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but you basically play him every single week, other than when he has some of these really hard games. And I've got a plan for you, which I'll tell you about in a minute, when it comes to some of those harder games as to what you do with him. Now, we've got an enabler. We're not going to pop Lewis Hall in. We're going to pop in Goodmanson for Leeds because he's been playing every single game for them. 3.8 million is a bargain. He's the sort of player that he's not going to be stressed on your bench because you're like, well, I think Leeds are going to going to concede most weeks in the nicest possible way. He's not been smashing it in FPL overall this season. So he's not someone that's going to bother you if he's on your bench. And if he does get bench points, it's like, well, it's going to happen from time to time. I was never going to play him anyway. But he will be useful potentially for some games where you need him. But he's ultimately largely a really nice second bench option to have in your team if you ever need him for an auto sub. So Goodmanson comes in, and I'll go on FPL.team in a minute, and I'll talk you through the week to weeks as to how this team looks and why it works so well from a limiting stress point of view. Now into midfield. Declan Rice comes in for your triple Arsenal. Again, you don't need to worry about him starting each week. He's been crucial to Arsenal's season, and in the harder games, he's been even more likely to get defcon. But he's on set pieces. I mean, if you look at his returns this season, I mean, he's just been so consistent. He was obviously out of the Villa game, which is why there's a blank there. But in terms of some of his pointage, like he has been a really consistent asset all season. So you just play Rice every week. You enjoy the returns he gets, and you don't worry about him. Into the next one, so we're going to go for Cole Palmer. So he's back in the Chelsea team now. He's back fit. He's on penalties, as I touched on with Shalabar. Beautiful fixture run coming up, but he's a fairly fixture-proof player. Like he can score a goal in any fixture. He can score a penalty in any fixture. You play him every single week, and you don't worry about him. So that's Cole Palmer. Right, which other players do we have in the team? I need to try and remember. Let me just get on my phone to remind myself who's in the squad. So we've also got Bruno Fernandes. So Bruno Fernandes, he has just come back from injury. Okay, he may not play the full game against Burnley. This is a wildcard team, you may want to pop in the coming weeks or something. But knowing him, he may well do all right and get some minutes against Burnley. So if you wanted to play like pop the wildcard team this week, no issues of giving him a start against Burnley. In worst case, there's a really nice bench player that will come in for you, which I'll talk to you about. In fact, let's talk to you about him now. The first bench player for this team is going to be Anderson of Forest. I just think Anderson of Forest is just a perfect first bench option for your team. Like, he's a player that doesn't often get attacking returns. You're never really scared of benching him. He does occasionally, in that, you might get lucky and get him off the bench or for the odd start that I'll talk to you about in a minute. But he gets DEFCON like most weeks. He plays every single game for Forest. So he's one that you don't have to feel stressed about having on your first bench. But when you do need him, he's most likely going to just come in for a 4 points for you, which you'll take. Like you'll be happy that I had that this week on my team. He came in for a 4 pointer. I was quite happy about it. So Anderson's just a lovely first bench. Goodmanson's second bench. They kind of write themselves. And just quickly, I'll tell you the third bench. It's basically an enabling Ashley Barnes. And again, he won't cause you stress third bench because he's never going to play. But you probably won't ever need him anyway because you've got a first bench and a second bench to play. So Barnes is the third bench, just to jump ahead. Now Bruno Guimaraes is actually going to be, for now, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. So he is our flexi punt slot. Okay, so you've got a load of players in your team. You're happy with starting week to week that are nailed or on penalties or good for DEFCON or whatever. Like you're happy playing all these players pretty much every single week in your team that I've talked you through, with those on the bench like Anderson and Goodson and Barnes I've mentioned. But then you have a punt slot that makes it more interesting, because if you have a set and forget team where you don't do anything, it can be a bit boring, right? Like you want to make some moves in FPL. You want to be able to do some things to try and beat the curve or have a bit of fun, etc. if you're feeling a particular punt on a given week. So this is what I call the punt slot. Now Bruno Guimaraes, you've used an example this week. Like he's got a lovely fix this week home to Leeds, and then also you could actually hold Bruno for another week or two with Wolves and Villa if you wanted to roll a couple of transfers. But the idea is you use this position to move around. So for example, if you were to hold Bruno for 3 weeks, generally speaking, this position you can literally transfer out each week. And I'd encourage you again to limit FPL pain. Maybe transfer the player out in the punt slot that maybe has a great fixture in the week you bring them in, but they have a horrible fixture the week after. So it's like, it's not going to be bothering me if I transfer them out and they do semi well the next week, because I was never expecting them to do well anyway. I had no confidence in starting. They just happened to do well. So you could bring in someone like Bruno like this for like a couple of weeks, and then like come Villa or come Liverpool, you say, okay, I don't like that fixture. This is now where I have a bit of fun, and I choose a player for that game week, in the price range I can afford, that sounds fun, that's got a good fixture, that might do well for me. So that's your punt slot, and that's where each week you can still be thinking to yourself, okay, which punt do I want this week? Like, what are the fixtures looking like? What's the form looking like? What are the minutes looking like? Who could be my punt this week? Obviously, there's a chance in FPL there's injuries and stuff, and that's where maybe in your punt slot, like with Bruno here, you can have a couple of weeks of Bruno. You can hopefully roll a transfer, and then if there's an injury down the line, you have some in the bank to deal with injuries in the team. And the idea is if a player gets injured, you kind of swap them for a like nailed on player. Like, if Tarkowski got injured, I could just swap him for Keane or something. He's going to do the same thing as him. Or like a Lacroix of Palace, it's just going to play every week, good for DEFCON, etc. I'm happy to start each week. But these particular players I've partly chosen because of the way that the rotation works down the line, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. And then finally up top, so in fact, I probably should do this for Haaland. So it's obviously Haaland. Like Haaland has to be in there. You play him every week. You captain him most weeks. It's just a no-brainer. And then the final spot is going to go to Igor Thiago. Again, because we want to reduce pain in FPL. Igor Thiago is a player, as proven of the weekend, is fairly fixture proof. Like he can score a penalty on any given game. He can score goals in any given game. Like a player that's on penalties that's nailed for 90 minutes, can always return for you. And Igor Thiago has done that all season. He scored a hat trick at Everton, which I wasn't expecting at the weekend. Everton can be quite difficult to break down. He goes and scores a hat trick against them. He's on pens. Like even in the harder games, he may just score a penalty or something for you. You play him every week and you enjoy the points he gets. Now let me quickly go into FPL.team. By the way, if you can't afford, this exact team, there's things again you can do. You could drop your goalkeeper down to a cheaper keeper that you're happy to just play every single week. Obviously, your punt slot can be a bit cheaper than mine. Tarkowski to Keane could be something you consider. Like, there's things you could do. Like I said, Lacroix's a nice kind of set and forget option that's a little bit cheaper. That's great for DEFCON. There's things you could do to reduce the budget of this team if you wanted to. But I don't think my team value is massive. So hopefully, most of you could get at least close to affording this, and maybe you don't have to change it too much. Now, this is where hopefully I kind of cement the logic in terms of like even just reducing benching headaches and like playing a team in a way that works week to week really well, and you can just focus on rotating around your punt slot, unless of course there's an injury and like I said you need to just swap out one of those players. But generally speaking, yeah, I think it works really nicely week to week between now and the end of the season. You obviously you'll still have your free hit, your triple captain. I'd suggest, your free hit you could use on a double game week or something, or blank one if you need it. Like you can use those chips still. You can use your triple captain on a double game week. Like you can still have fun with those chips in a way where, yeah, you play those chips when you get to them and when you need them. But yeah, here's how the basically. So game week 21. This is how the team looks. As discussed, Dubravka's your first bench keeper, Anderson's your first bench enabler, and then you've got Goodmanson second bench, Barnes third bench. There's no stress benching those guys. You're happy to see them on your bench. If they come on and get you points, happy days if you need them. Anderson's probably going to get 4 most weeks, and the rest of the players in your team, like, look, the fixtures are all pretty decent overall. There's no one there you're thinking like, oh, that's a terrible fixture. Then you look into game week 22. Game week 22, in this particular team, okay, we leave Bruno for another week. We roll a transfer to have a transfer in the bank when we need it. All the other players look great. There's no like terrible fixture in there where you're bothered, having that player. Bruno Fernandes case home City, but it's a derby game. It's Fernandes. He's on penalties. He gets DEFCON. He's fine. The week after that, let's have a look at the team. It's looking pretty fine. Okay, Bruno at Arsenal isn't ideal, you could argue, but again, it's Bruno Fernandes. That's why he's in the team. He's on penalties. He's good at DEFCON. He can return in any given game week. You play him, you enjoy the points he gets when he gets the points, and on the weeks he blanks. He blanks. Every player is going to blank sometime, right? So there's no issues there. I hope you can see, like with this forward line, basically, yeah, you don't worry about the fixture too much. You play them whatever. The defender's more or less the same with Raya, Gabriel. You play them every week. Some of these guys I'll talk to you about in a minute if their fixtures get worse. So here, this week, for example, this week where so we said Bruno Guimaraes away to Liverpool this week. Let's say this is the week you're like, I want to move that player on for a funner punt. Well, interestingly enough, that's a week where Chelsea come into some really nice fixtures. And you might think to yourself that week, do you know what? I fancy a 4-week punt or a 2-week punt or something on Enzo Fernandez. Or if, like I said, you're like, oh, I don't want to commit to a player for that long. Who else could you go for? Well, Bournemouth away to Wolves, that's pretty nice. You could go, I'll have Tavernier for 1 week, put in Tavernier. The week after that, you then move him on to a different punt. Someone like Wilson for Fulham who's at home to Everton. So there's options there. So let's flick through so we continue to show you how this team works so well. So this week is an interesting one. Game week 25. You'll notice Mukiele's away to Arsenal. Now, that's a fixture that would bother me. I wouldn't want to start Mukiele away to Arsenal because I'm like, they're just definitely going to concede, surely. But what's really useful is that's a week where the likes of Anderson for Forest plays Leeds. And if you didn't want to play him, you could play Goodmanson at home to Forest. It's actually not a bad fixture. And you've got a lovely alternative there to just pop in for Mukiele. Mukiele goes on the bench. And in that situation, I'd probably put Goodmanson first bench, for example. And you're fairly happy with that setup again. Moving through game week 26, so you'll notice Mukiele home to Liverpool, not the nicest fixture overall. But look, Anderson's home to Wolves. What a lovely fixture that is. Perfect little rotation. Anderson comes in at home to Wolves for a plum fixture, and you can just happily bench Mukiele. No dramas there. Okay, we'll skim through into 27. So this one, Mukiele comes back in. He's home to Fulham. You go back to your original 4-4-2. Happy days. And like I said, this Enzo position here, like you probably have played around with this a bit already. And then, come game week 28, you're thinking, okay, I want another fun punt on my punt position. Who's got what? Well, we've got Villa away to Wolves. That's pretty nice. Bournemouth at home to Sunderland's pretty nice. You could even like, if you could afford a Kevin Schade, he might be a nice punt away to Burnley. And then you've got Newcastle home to Everton here. Like at that point, Gordon might be injured. Harvey Barnes could be looking nailed in great form. You think, oh, I'm going to have a 1 week punt on Barnes. Happy days. You bring Barnes in. Game week 29, as you see, it's a 4-4-2 again. The defenders stay the same. In fact, just going back quickly, I think I missed something. One important thing here with Chalabar. So for Chalabar, this is a thought for you guys. So come game week 28, his beautiful fixture on ends, and he goes into away to Arsenal, which is a fixture you don't want to have to play him in. My plan with Chalabar is the week he's away to Arsenal, your most nailed defender in the game, or at least on par with some of the other most nailed defenders in the game, Virgil van Dijk, is at home to West Ham. What a brilliant entry point that is. And what you'll like to see is home to West Ham, away to Wolves, so on, so on, so on. There isn't one terrible fixture between now and the end of the season where you think, I couldn't bear starting Virgil. So Virgil becomes a nice little flip in for Chalabar to see you through to the end of the season with this particular team. I don't think Tarkowski away at Newcastle's terrible. He'll probably get Defcon. And, Newcastle haven't been blowing teams away this season. So I'd like to think Tarkowski has a chance for clean sheet. It's not a fixture where you can't bear playing him. And if you get to that week and Newcastle are flying and Everton are really struggling, well, again, that's where your Anderson can just come in because it's a 4-4-2. Anderson can always come in if you need him for a defender, and he'll probably pick up a nice 4 points for you or something. So no complaints there. Right, slapping through game week 29, so that looks absolutely fine for your usual 4-4-2. Game week 30, oh, Tarkowski is away to Arsenal. I don't like that very much. Oh, but Anderson's at home to Fulham. It works really nicely. I hope you can see what I'm saying with this. You're obviously still playing around with your Enzo punt position week to week when you, see a player that you fancy bringing in. This week, again, so Tarkowski home to Chelsea, I think's fine. I think I now need to just reset the team back to what it was with a 4-4-2. I've got no real issues with that team again. Sunderland against Newcastle's a derby, could be a tight game. Michele could do really nicely away to Newcastle. But again, you've got the Anderson option if you want him. You've even got Goodmanson at home to Brentford that week, which isn't too bad if you wanted to play him. Game week 32, we're nearly the end of the season before I have an insane coughing fit. Looks fine for the 4-4-2 overall. No issues of that. Game week 33, like I said, Gabriel is fairly fixture proof, as is Raya. They could well keep that a tight game at City for the title. I wouldn't have any issue playing them even in that game. But then look at this. Mukiele away to Villa, or even Tarkowski home to Liverpool. You might think I don't like either of those. Okay, Tarkowski in the derby game, he might be good. I might want to play him that week. But if you don't want to play either, beautifully, you'll notice Anderson's at home to Burnley, plum fixture, could get an attack in return, and Goodmanson's at home to Wolves, one of the plummest fixtures in the league. And you sort both of them out perfectly in game week 33. Then game week 34. Tarkowski obviously comes back in for Goodmanson, and you can happily bring Mukiele back in for his game home to Forest. You're back to the original 4-4-2 while you continue to play around with your punt position. Obviously, there might be a free hit at this point with the double game weeks, but that's fine. You just play a free hit. Your team gets back to normal the week after. There's no issues when you play that. Oh, look at this. Goodmanson's nicely at home to Burnley on the week where Tarkowski's home to City. So he just comes in really nicely there. Game week 36, Tarkowski comes back in for Goodmanson. You're happy with your 4-4-2. Like I said, at that point, Enzo is a fun punt for that week that you're feeling. Just for the sake of it, let's have a look. Who could be a fun punt that week? Oh, Palace are home to Everton. Maybe that's a week I bring in Ismail Assar for my punt for Enzo Fernandez. Happy days of that one, just to sort of demonstrate it. You'd be able to afford him and hopefully be back by injury. Oh no, I think he's away AFCON, isn't he? So he's definitely back by AFCON by then. And then game week 37, just the last couple of game weeks, just to prove the point. You're happy enough with that 4-4-2 again. You've got your punt position to change around. And then game week 38 to finish the season. Yet again, the players have a good enough fixture. And again, if you didn't like Tarkowski away to Spurs there, you could always bring in an Anderson of Forest. You know, Thiago away to Liverpool. Liverpool have been leaky this season. He could well score. He's on penalties, like I said. He's fairly fixture proof. You just stick to the main sort of assets that you're happy with playing every single week, and then there's those few rotation points that I've planned out for you guys, which you can bring in when you need them. And like, let's say Leeds are flying come the end of the season, you might even prefer coming into the season. Oh, actually, I think he looks better away to West Ham instead of Mukiele home to Chelsea. There's just so many good rotations in this team that work really nicely in a way where each week you're happy benching the players you're benching. You've got a nice little punt position that can constantly change week to week, assuming you have transfers to play with most week because you're going to be rolling. Basically, say rolling the transfer, you'll roll the transfer if you don't change your punt position. But the idea is if there's no injuries every single week, if you wanted to, for the weeks where you don't have an injury, you just change your punt position to a player that you're feeling for that particular game week. Um, and I think even with that being said, like let's say one week, you know, you had a couple of injuries and you only had one free transfer in the bank, you could even accept with this structure. Like if that ever happens, I'll just accept as part of the process. I'll take a hit that week. I'll deal with the injury, and I'll still enjoy my punt position. Or that week, you might go, I'll just use my transfer to deal with the injury, and then the week after that, I'll get back to switching around my punt position to enjoy them. And again, the beauty of this team is if your punt position on a given week like had to stay there for one more week, but let's say it was oh he's playing Arsenal this week, well with your bench, you know the likes of an Anderson, you know if you needed him, could probably come in for your punt position that week and just get you a nice 4 points or something. So I just think the team looks really nice. There's no real benching headaches. The rotation's there. And you know, most weeks you should be able to have a free transfer for your punt position. And like I said, if you ever need to take a hit to deal with an injury or roll, you know, use your punt position transfer to deal with an injury and then get back to having a fun punt the week after. So I hope you can see the logic there. I hope you can see that it's possible in FPL. I think if you play it, you obviously have to have discipline to follow through this, right? Like you go into this team with the plan of I'm going to see this through. I'm not going to get carried away. Like the problem, I suppose, one of the downsides is if like a Watkins is flying on form and you're like, oh, I really want to bring him in, but my punt position's a midfield position. You're a bit tied. But you know, I guess in that situation, you know, you kind of have to weigh up sort of risk versus reward, pain versus glory. But you also remember like why you've gone to this strategy, and you think, okay, well, Watkins is in good form, but equally Thiago's still playing 90 minutes. He's still on penalties. He's still ticking over. And actually, you know, let's say Villa that week, you know, had a planned fixture and you couldn't get Watkins, well, you could use your punt position to get to a different Villa attacker and to give you some kind of coverage, you know, for that team. So there's things you could do in a way where like the punt position means you can still get some coverage right and still have some fun. But it means overall you don't have constant like I guess like transfer stress, benching pain, that sort of thing. And if you ever have an injury doubt like Fernandez this week, like I said, you've got a first bench in Anderson that can always come in if you need them. Where it doesn't matter if you can risk starting a doubtful player because you know that the likes of Anderson are there to come in if you need them. So I'll leave this video there before it's too long. Do comment if you have any like thoughts on what I've put together here, what I've proposed. I hope you can see the logic as to how the team works and how hopefully it actually can reduce FPL pain in terms of transferring out players that do really well. Because ideally, your punt position you transfer out when they've got a stinker, and then the player bringing in has a nice fixture, etc. And because you're setting them for getting the rest of your team, you're limiting the amount of like players you're taking out that they could then haul and they could punish you and hurt you and annoy you, etc. So I'll leave it there before the video is too long. I may well consider doing a team like this for myself to help me enjoy the game more with less FPL pain and stress. But for now, I'll leave the video there. Do like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Want to tune into more sort of videos in the future of this sort of content and the usual content I bring. But for now, have a great game week. Tomorrow evening, the deadline. So hope your arrows are green and catch you on the next one.